They say you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat those who work behind the scenes. Yet, no one noticed when Evelyn Johnson, dressed in a worn-out uniform and pushing a cleaning cart, walked into the spotless offices of Pinnacle Enterprises in downtown Chicago. With her hair pulled back, her head bowed, and her hands showing the wear of many years of labor, she blended into the background. The executives in their designer suits and polished shoes paid her no mind. Just another worker cleaning up after them. But little did they know that Evelyn was about to turn everything upside down. On an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning, Greg Matthews, one of the top executives, smirked as he saw Evelyn cleaning the glass windows in the boardroom. "Make sure you don't leave any streaks this time, okay? Some of us have important meetings here," he remarked with a smug grin, barely glancing her way. His colleagues chuckled along with him. Evelyn kept silent, simply nodding and continuing to clean. Little did Greg know that his careless laugh would come back to haunt him. As the day went on, employees walked past Evelyn as if she were part of the furniture, not a person. Some gossiped, others made jokes at her expense, and a few even waved her aside if she happened to be in their way. None of them realized who she really was, except for one person, Jessica Reyes. Recently hired and fresh out of business school, Jessica had noticed how everyone treated Evelyn, and it didn't sit well with her. She'd seen a certain quiet confidence in Evelyn, a sharpness in her gaze that hinted she was noticing far more than the dust on the floors. Then, that afternoon, everything changed. The company's CEO had flown in from New York for the much-anticipated annual review meeting. James Willard was a man everyone respected, feared, and admired, the ruthless leader who had propelled Pinnacle Enterprises to the top of the industry. When he entered the boardroom, tension filled the air, and a hush fell over the room as he took his place at the head of the table. But then something unexpected happened. James's gaze fell on Evelyn, who stood quietly in the corner with her cleaning supplies. For a moment, the room seemed to freeze, and then he smiled warmly. "Evelyn," he said, "I think it's time, don't you?" The board members looked around, bewildered, as the realization dawned that something big was happening. Greg Matthews, the executive who had mocked her earlier, sat frozen, his arrogant smirk gone. Evelyn calmly set down the cloth she'd been holding and took a deep breath, her actions deliberate as she turned to face the room full of astonished executives. "Yes, Mr. Willard," she replied, her voice carrying a quiet authority that had always been there, just hidden. As she walked to the front of the room, a wave of shock swept through the room, and Jessica's heart raced as she sensed that something incredible was about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," James Willard announced, "I'd like to introduce you to Pinnacle's majority shareholder, Evelyn Johnson." Gasps echoed through the room as eyes widened and jaws dropped, leaving the previously smug executives speechless. Greg Matthews sat paralyzed, his face drained of color as he struggled to grasp what he'd just heard. Evelyn now stood tall, her presence commanding the room with a confidence none of them had anticipated. For years, she had been right there among them, unnoticed and underestimated, yet holding the most power of all. She began speaking, her voice steady and unwavering. "I've observed this company from a unique perspective. Not from behind a desk, but from the floors you walk on, the hallways you pass through, and the offices you leave in disarray. And what I've seen is a culture that prioritizes profit over people, lacking in basic respect. But starting today, that's going to change." Evelyn's transformation was undeniable. No longer the quiet cleaner everyone overlooked, she now stood as the true power behind the company. A woman who had worked her way up from nothing to own the very empire they all served. From this point forward, she continued, meeting each executive's gaze directly, "Things will be different. I'm not just here to clean up your messes anymore. I'm here to clean up this company, Jessica, standing near the back of the room, couldn't help but smile. Evelyn had always been the unseen strength behind the scenes, and now she was ready to leave a mark that no one would ever forget. As Evelyn finished speaking, the truth settled in among those present. They had ridiculed, belittled, and dismissed her without ever truly knowing her, and now she held the future of the company in her hands. The boardroom was filled with stunned silence, shock, and disbelief hanging heavily in the air. Greg Matthews, who had mocked Evelyn only hours earlier, sat frozen, his fingers gripping the armrests of his chair as he struggled to process this new reality. His mind raced, recalling every condescending remark, every dismissive gesture he'd made. How could he have been so blind? The woman standing before them was no longer someone they could ignore or dismiss. She was a force to be reckoned with, and they all knew it. The rigid corporate world they had surrounded themselves with suddenly felt brittle, like glass on the verge of shattering. "Let me make myself clear," Evelyn said, her voice slicing through the tense silence. "This company will no longer tolerate the arrogance and disregard I've witnessed here. Somewhere along the line, you forgot what it means to respect the people who keep this place running. That stops today." James Willard, the CEO, had been observing the scene in silence, nodding in agreement as Evelyn spoke. It became clear to everyone in the room that this moment had been meticulously planned, with Evelyn and James working together behind the scenes to orchestrate this reveal. James wasn't the typical hard-nosed CEO. He was a visionary who believed in lifting up those who had earned their place through hard work and resilience. People like Evelyn. The executives sat immobilized, some whispering in disbelief while others stared at Evelyn with newfound respect. Finally, Greg, visibly shaken, managed to speak. His voice was unsteady as he stammered, "Ms. Johnson, I didn't know. I had no idea." Evelyn's expression remained calm but icy as she looked directly at him. "No, you didn't," she replied, her voice unwavering. "But that's precisely the problem, isn't it? You didn't care to know. You saw me every day, yet you never actually saw me. You never asked who I was or why I was here. To you, I was just a uniform, and that's why you'll be the first to go." Greg's face went pale. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice cracking. She looked him straight in the eye, her tone resolute. "You're fired, Greg?" Effective immediately. A flurry of murmurs broke out as Greg sank back in his chair, his hands trembling. Here was the man who had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, stepping over others without hesitation. And now, in a matter of minutes, everything he had worked for had been taken away. "This is a wake-up call for all of you," she continued, addressing the room with a firm authority that no one dared to question. Evelyn addressed the board with a steady voice. "I may have started from the ground up, but I worked my way here step by step. I've been buying shares piece by piece until I now hold the majority of this company. Pinnacle Enterprises is about to undergo some real changes, and if you're not ready to adapt, you're free to leave." Her words lingered, a clear warning to the remaining executives. Those who had built walls of superiority around themselves now saw them crumble. Jessica, observing from the back of the room, felt a deep admiration for Evelyn. She had entered the company hopeful but quickly saw the toxic culture embedded in its core. Now, witnessing this pivotal moment, she knew it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one she wanted to be a part of. Evelyn then turned to James Willard, who nodded in understanding. "Thank you, James, for believing in me when no one else did," she said, her voice softening. James responded with a smile, his respect for her evident. "It's easy to believe in someone as strong and determined as you, Evelyn. This company needs a leader like you, someone who truly knows what it means to work hard and earn their place." Taking one last look around the room, Evelyn met each executive's gaze. "This is your chance," she said with firm resolve. "You can choose to stay and contribute to something better, or you can go. But either way, things will be different from now on." With that, she turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. In a single moment, the power dynamics had shifted, and everyone knew it. Jessica quickly followed her, her heart racing, catching up with Evelyn in the hallway. "Ms. Johnson," she began, her voice full of respect. "Thank you for everything." Evelyn stopped and looked at Jessica with a warm smile. "No need to thank me, Jessica. Just remember this. Never let anyone else define your worth. That's something you decide." Jessica nodded, her admiration for Evelyn deepening. She realized she had just witnessed something extraordinary, a moment that would reshape not only the company but her own life. As Evelyn walked out of the office, the vast city of Chicago spread out before her. The skyline, with its towering buildings and bustling streets, looked different today. It wasn't just a landscape of glass and steel anymore. It was proof that anyone, regardless of where they came from, could rise to the top if they had the strength to endure. And as for Pinnacle Enterprises, they would never forget the day they underestimated Evelyn Johnson, the cleaning lady who, it turned out, held the reins all along. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment and like this video. Your support means a lot. Thank you.